You guys know what time it is. It's time for God's Not Dead 4, We the People. To me, that title just screamed Christian nationalism, and I wasn't surprised at all, even though I did go into this movie blind. But I knew from the title the gist of it, okay? Like what we were going to get into, what we were in for. So let's go ahead. Let's get started. Grab some popcorn, grab a drink, maybe make it a double, and let's just get into it. So at the beginning of this movie, it opens with a speech from none other than Ronald Reagan. Yeah. Then we have another inspirational quote.
For it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you.
And then one of the first scenes we see Martin taking a walk and talking with Aisha. She is the Muslim girl from the first movie. You guys remember Martin. He was in the past 3 movies. Obviously, he's not a student anymore. They're more grown. He is talking about how he just went on a mission trip to China, but he doesn't think he'll be back because of their persecution of Christians.
I think that Christianity could be so
lonely.
Next scene, we have Dave, Pastor Dave from the last movie, who was the main character in the last movie. And he is shown teaching a group of kids about the Bible inside of a home. It's like a homeschooling group, so it looks like a tiny miniature classroom, basically, that he's teaching inside of somebody's home. Dave is talking about Noah, and they get a knock at the door. It's a social worker. I don't know if they specify it's of a social worker, but something like that. So this social worker type person is coming to do a homeschool environment check. She is already right away represented as like cold and like just like kind of mean and rude. There's this one part where the kid asks if she is a miss or a missus, and the lady and the mom there was like, so basically my kid's just asking if you're married or not, and the woman says something like, actually I prefer the term like self-partnered.
I identify as self-partnered.
Oh my God!
I don't I don't know. The social worker is evaluating them, and she's being like all like, again, cold, mean, little snappy. After the fact, she's talking to the adults, the 2 parents that run the homeschool, in the kitchen. And she says, the social worker is talking about the Noah myth, is what she calls it. And she asks some pretty base questions.
And the animals? What exactly was the sin that required their destruction?
Don't answer the question, but they kind of make it seem like that's a ridiculous question. But this is a question I have asked myself and other people, and no one seems to have an answer for me. I've gotten answers like, oh, animals just don't feel pain like we do, which is bullshit. Or like, you know, they're animals, they don't have souls, so who cares? Those are really the only 2 answers I've received from people. Then they show a senator on television saying there needs to be a standard for education for all kids, you know, including homeschooling. But right away I knew where this was going. All right. So now we see Aisha and Martin with Pastor Dave. Dave tells Martin he's going to be a great pastor. So I guess Martin has went to seminary school and he's about to become a pastor. Then Dave says that every family homeschooling co-op has just received a court summons. And then they talk about how they thought this was a free country, but I guess not. Then Pastor Dave is meeting with the parents that are homeschooling their kids. And they're saying they're not going to cooperate with the government, I guess, or the laws. And they're saying that in schools they are teaching kids they don't need God. I must have missed that. I must have been sick that day when I was in public school when they told me I don't need God. And there are flashbacks to Pastor Dave being in prison. What a traumatic time. Okay, now basically we are in like a small court where the parents that run this homeschooling thing, Pastor Dave and the social worker, a social worker type person, the social worker person is saying that they do not meet the standards, especially in the sciences. True, because a lot of evangelicals who homeschool teach their kids that evolution isn't real, stuff within biology isn't real, that the earth is only 6,000 years old, yada, yada, yada. And Dave says, don't we pay taxes to fund local schools? So I guess he's saying like they pay their dues. The judge then gives them 10 days to adhere to the curriculum or go back to public school. And after that, they will be fined $1,000 a day and could get arrested and get their kids taken away from them by the state. They are setting up this dramatic scene where Christian parents are going to get their kids ripped away from them, which is like a fear narrative that is very much spread around the evangelical community, that like basically evil liberal people want to take your kids away from conservative families, Christian conservative families. Now we see Dave thinking about Jude, his co-pastor, and like wise words Jude was saying about like sticking true to your faith and stuff like that. If you remember what happened to Jude in the last movie. R.I.P. Jude. R.I.P. Now the homeschool parents and Pastor Dave are having a meeting and talking about how they are teaching second graders about birth control.
This is an advertisement for birth control.
Yeah. They passed it out in class. Maddie's in the 2nd grade. He's 7.
Of all of the things in the world that have never happened, that has never happened the most.
Again, I have no idea what type of school they're going to. How many second graders do you know that are on birth control? Whether that's ever happened before or not, I don't know. I couldn't find an example of this when I looked it up, but if you can, let me know in the comments. Then Martin says that homeschoolers are the only ones who don't have to deal with state-run indoctrination in China, and they have to hide in fear, basically saying public schools are where kids get indoctrinated. And then Dave says, we need to go to Washington, D.C. and fight this. Road trip with Martin and Dave and some of the homeschool homies. So now they're showing Aisha again, and she is calling her dad, if you remember the relationship between her and her dad in the first movie. It seems like they might be trying to mend their relationship, or she's trying to get in contact with him. Okay, so now we are in D.C. with Dave, Martin, and two of the there's 2 homeschooler moms and I think 1 dad, the one that runs the like homeschooling home. The one mom talks about how her son has been traumatized because his dad died in the military. She says her son wouldn't last 10 minutes in public school. She says that they would put him in special education and put labels on him. I didn't understand this because she's saying that her kid had trauma, and so they would put him in special needs. They would label him as special needs. I don't understand what's going on there. That's very vague and doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then she talks about how his dad died defending their freedoms. And if her son went to public school, then his dad died for nothing. What? What are you even saying? And then they show this scene, which is literally straight out of National Treasure.
That all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war.
I'm sorry, you cannot tell me they didn't get some inspo from National Treasure.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Side note, great movie. 10 out of 10. When I was younger, I watched it constantly. Like, a weird amount. I'm not sure why, but I just freaking love that movie, okay? But, like, every time they had a scene like this, even the music sounded just like National Treasure to me, and it's just so funny. I'm like, they had to have been inspired by that movie. I just know it. Now Pastor Dave is meeting with this Congressman Smith in D.C. to talk about this whole thing. You'll never guess who this congressman is.
Sounds reasonable.
Oh, it's meant to.
Yep. Isaiah Washington, aka Dr. Burke from Grey's Anatomy. I knew I recognized him from somewhere when I first saw him, but it took me a little bit to realize who he was. And I had to look up the actor's like name and then what he was in, and I was like, holy shit, it's Dr. Burke. By the way, Christina would not approve of this role. Just saying. I think this is my absolute favorite part of watching these movies, is discovering which random ass actors and actresses are getting in on these movies. It's just so funny. It's like I never know who I'm gonna find in these movies. It's so random. Anyways, Dr. Burke gets to talking about the educational guidelines, and he says,
those guidelines are increasingly at odds with the Christian worldview.
When he first said this, my first thought was he has to be referring to kids learning about like evolution and stuff, due to a lot of evangelicals not accepting stuff like evolution as fact, since they're young earth creationists. I don't know. Then he starts talking about the agenda.
Common Core agenda, curriculum.
Then he says the school teachers teach them that there is no such thing as truth. And then Dave says,
Because if truth doesn't exist, then there's no moral absolutes.
okay, can we get specific here? Can we talk about what you're actually saying? One of my biggest pet peeves in these movies, and I know they do it on purpose, I know it's for a reason, they keep being vague for, like, they won't say what they actually mean. Like, what truths are we talking about here? What truths aren't they teaching them? Congressman Smith says by middle school, they start to teach them a political agenda and that the founding fathers were oppressive slave owners. And then Pastor Dave says, well, weren't they? And Congressman Smith says,
Most of them were just kids. Edward Rutledge and Thomas Lynch both were just 26 years old when they signed the Declaration of Independence.
I was very unaware that ages 26 to 33 are children. I was very unaware of that. News to me, I'm living my life wrong as a 31-year-old if I'm still a child. I need to change some things because I'm obviously not an adult at this age. Like, I'm just a kid. This reminded me, I'm sure a lot of you thought this when I said this. This reminded me of J.D. Vance when there was that group chat leaked from the Young Republicans group chat or whatever, and they were talking about how much they love Tiny Mustache Man and the things he did in gas chambers. And J.D. Vance deadass said, guys, they're just kids. Their lives shouldn't be ruined over this. And these group of kids were like ages 24 to into their like mid-late 30s, I think. I know that the youngest was like, I think mid-20s or a little before that. What is this kind of excuse? It's actually so insane to me. Calling them kids as some kind of like, well, they were just still a little immature at that age. What the hell is going on? It's insane to call grown-ass, like, adult men children as some kind of excuse. It's just absolutely insane to me. And then he's like, yeah, some had slaves, but some didn't. And they get lumped in together. Sad. What a tragedy, I guess. What a tragedy that some of them get lumped in together. I'm pretty sure it's like common sense that not every single person had slaves back then. I think that it's a very common knowledge, but hey, I could be wrong. But then Dr. Burke says, but they hate when you discredit them. And like, I'm just like pretty sure no one cares if you point out the fact that not every single person had a slave back then. In fact, that's what I was taught. What about it? Like, what about it? Like, why do we care about this? It is also not lost on me that they are using race to get the point across like they do with other things. They are having a black man say this specifically for a reason. To talk about how not all white men were the bad guys. Not all of them were bad guys. Some of them were like okay guys, and the ones who weren't, they were just immature kids. They have this weird obsession with defending old dead dudes. My guess is so that the issues of our history aren't pointed out because they see themselves in those men. You know what they say, like those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. I'm thinking that's the point for some of these people, if you know what I mean. Then Dr. Burke says they don't teach children that God gave them their rights, only the government. Why would they be teaching them that God gave them their rights? Why? Again, it's like this weird thing of like, they act like it's so immoral to want to have a separation of church and state. Again, the horror of separation of church and state, gasp. Now we see Aisha getting in a pretty brutal car accident. Next, they jump to showing them at the Congressional hearing, I guess what you would call it, in DC. First, they are talking to the Secretary of Education, and she says we should outlaw homeschooling like they do in Europe, or have strict regulations for it. Now it's Pastor Dave and his crew's turn to talk about this thing. The parents start off by saying their kids do much better on standardized testing than kids in public school by a wide margin. They're so much smarter than the public school kids. I wonder if that includes the sciences and biology and things surrounding evolution.
District, they teach a revisionist version of history, which is both progressive and anti-faith in equal measure.
I feel like the issue for them is like saying that the founding fathers, okay, so they always talk about the founding fathers being Christian, right? They say like our Christian roots. I think they don't want these people to be painted as bad because they're like, these were strong, good Christian men that we should still be following their moral system, even though we know they had slaves and they like owned other people. And they don't want it to be said in a way that makes them look bad. Okay. And the parents go on and say they don't teach kids that Christianity is the foundation of the United States history. So essentially, these parents are upset that white Christian nationalism isn't being taught in schools. Got it. In between this, they're showing Aisha, the one who got in the car accident, and her dad. Like, she is in the hospital in a coma, and her dad comes to visit her in the hospital. And they're kind of showing like flashbacks of when her dad beat the crap out of her, and like I guess the dad feels bad. And he is really upset. He's like crying, seeing her in such a bad state. The doctor tells the dad that his daughter might have brain damage, but like he thinks she's going to be okay. Not brain damage, sorry, some kind of head injury. And then the doctor suggests that the dad should be praying for her. And her dad is like, prayer? Why are we pretending like this Muslim man has never heard of prayer before? It was so weird. Like, whenever the doctor said that to him, he looked at him like, prayer? Never heard of her. And it's so weird because typically Muslims pray more than Christians do, because I looked it up and it's like a minimum for most of them, like 5 times a day. Like, there's not a lot of Christians that pray 5 times a day. So it's like he would be more familiar with prayer than you would be. So why are they making him act confused by this? It's very bizarre. Now we're back at the hearing, and the parents say that belief in the Bible is not anti-science. And the one who has the son, who she said her son was traumatized when his dad died in the military, her husband died in the military, says she works at a restaurant and now is unemployed, and they're kind of looking at her like, you don't have any authority to say anything. But then she says,
but before he died, I completed an advanced degree in aerospace engineering.
Big shock. Everyone's like, damn, this woman, she really just dropped a bombshell on him. I feel like they're doing this to be like, hey, actually smart people are religious too. And look, this woman works for NASA and she's a Christian. And to give themselves more credibility, I guess, because obviously there are some people who stereotype religious people as unintelligent. I'll be honest, I never bought into that because I just don't think it's true. I don't think that if you're religious, you're stupid or something, or you're less intelligent. And I don't think all atheists are smart or like intelligent automatically because they're atheists. Like, that is a fundamentalist kind of thinking. That's a black and white kind of thinking that I don't prescribe to anymore. That doesn't make sense anymore to me. But so I'm guessing that's why they did that, because they're trying to fight back against this stereotype that people put onto them. Her argument is basically that smart people have also been religious, and NASA has religious people working for them. Which, yeah, like, I figured that because, again, it's the most popular religion in the United States. Like, of course, you're gonna have Christians working for NASA too. Yeah. Then she says that most people think that they are flat earthers. And then she says, but my 7-year-old knows the earth is round. Yes! Yeah! Well, thank goodness for that. I mean, at least we have that going on. But I've seen some Christians say that they're flat earthers and they think the Bible like backs them up on this claim. But I don't think it's a super common thing in general. And I don't really think a lot of people think it's a super common thing in Christianity to think the earth is flat. I think it's just that when you come across flat earthers, they typically are religious for some reason. Again, I guess there are people who think the Bible backs this up, but again, it's just like not a super common thing in religion to think the earth is flat. And the mom says her husband died for her freedoms, and then she gets her mic drop moment.
I would prefer you call me Mrs. Hayes, out of respect of my marriage and to my husband's memory.
She said, put some respect on my man's name. Aisha, the judge back in their hometown, who is the local judge in their town, presiding over the case of the homeschooling families. They are showing her and her daughter eating dinner. Side note, the daughter is dating the son of one of the like homeschooling parents, like the people who run the homeschooling thing. She's dating him basically. And so she knows about this case. And so now she's like angry at her mom for like, I don't know, working on this case because she sees her as like attacking homeschooling families or something, or like attacking the mom of the guy she likes. So she learns about the situation from the son of the homeschooling parent. So she gets mad at her mom, and her mom says,
why does every conversation have to go back
Homeschooling is separatist, elitist, and racist, Kayla.
During this, the daughter's like, Mom, why does it always have to come to this? AKA, Mom, why are you being so woke all the time? It's just not that deep. Just like, you know, to take a dig at these dirty liberals. Why do they always got to make it about all these things? You know what I mean? Like, they're always doing that. So annoying. Then they say, then they show Dave and the crew back at the hotel. This is like that night. And Pastor Dave goes to the lobby to grab some food, and he overhears some of the Congress people talking shit on holy rollers.
Anyone buying the holy roller story that she used to work at NASA?
Hey, someone has to empty out the garbage cans, am I right?
Because, I mean, you know the drill. They're hateful, they're bitter, and without Christianity, they have no morals. Now we are back at the hearing the next day, and that same congresswoman that was talking shit earlier has the audacity to say something. And she goes to say that the Bible is sexist, and Dave says,
Considering the time when it was written, the Bible is one of the most pro-feminist documents in history. In an era where women were treated as property.
Right. Because there's just definitely no owning women as property in the Bible, right? That didn't happen. Just ignore about, I don't know, most of the Bible, and I guess you can say this. Now it's showing we're back with the local judge, the judge that's overseeing the case back in their hometown, and her daughter. And they discuss the case again, and the daughter's trying to argue for homeschooling, and basically saying, why homeschooling? Why is homeschooling misaligned with liberal values? Like, what about this goes against your liberal values? Basically setting the narrative that public schools equal liberal indoctrination. And then the mom says we shouldn't be teaching children to be suspicious of public institutions. Okay, so here they are doing this thing of accusing blind indoctrination or blind loyalty into, like, I don't know, liberalism. So they attempt to flip sides, like, which leads them to look like the rational ones, the ones who question everything, the ones who go against the grain, and like the liberals are actually the ones that are indoctrinating kids, and they're not indoctrinating kids into religion. Basically, they are pointing the finger at them and being like, no, that's actually you guys. You guys are doing this, not me. And of course, they bring up the diversity and inclusion thing again, making Christians a victim in this scenario, saying, oh yeah, it's all about inclusion and diversity, except for when it's Christians, right? And I'm pretty sure this is like word for word what was said in the second one when John Tucker was in court. Like, almost word for word. So they really lean heavy into this liberals are oppressing us thing. Now we are back at the hearing, and Pastor Dave literally opens with that argument, that same exact argument of the liberals oppressing the Christians.
Because you label intolerant anyone who you don't agree with, and you label divisive as anyone who doesn't agree with you.
Then Dave talks about all this flowery stuff surrounding Jesus' teachings.
Generosity to those in need, and embrace those outside their ethnic circles. Would you call that divisive?
And says, does this sound divisive to you? While ignoring so many other things that happen in the Bible. Do I think some people could get some good stuff from the, like, the person who's betrayed in the Bible as Jesus? Sure. But that's not, but pretending like that's all there is dishonest. It's disingenuous. Like, you know, there's stuff in there that's way harder to justify and explain to people, and doesn't have the same, like, nice flowery language that that is used with Jesus. They tend to use that, like, flowery language when it's convenient. Then Dave holds up a Bible and calls it truth, and the congressman says, your truth, and Dave says,
truth is truth for everyone and everywhere, even if over time it loses its popularity or becomes politically incorrect.
Christians say this all the time of, like, this is the truth whether you like it or not, which to me is just like a meaningless statement, because you don't have proof to back up what you're saying. Like, you could do this with literally anything. Like, I could make a random claim like, There's actually this magical giant walrus in the sky, and he controls everything. And if you don't believe in him, then you'll die by volcano in the afterlife forever, and you'll burn in this volcano forever. And I could just be like, well, it's the truth, whether you like it or not. That's like a meaningless statement. That's a meaningless statement if you don't have proof to put behind it. Just, nope, sorry, it's the truth, even if you don't believe it. And it's like, okay, I mean, you can say that, but it just doesn't mean anything. It's a nothing burger. Also, he mentions like the politically correct thing. Don't get me started. Then Dave is going on about Christianity is the truth, and the judge is like, okay, we're done here, it's over, and says that they will vote on it and they'll come to a close. Which, yeah, at this point, Dave is just giving a random sermon. Like, that's not what we came here for. But then the congressman, so like, they ended there. Dave's in like a different like waiting room type thing, and that congressman who ended it then goes to Dave and says, "You've impressed me. You should go into politics." Huh? What? What? He just gave a sermon. Like, I'm so confused how that was impressive. He held up the Bible and said, "This is true. I don't need to back up my claim. It's just true whether you like it or not." And this guy's like, "I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. You should get into politics," which actually is pretty ironic and funny because, like, considering the people who are in office right now, that is like them, quite literally. Then he tells Dave his book is getting in the way, and Dave is like, yeah, in the way of moral relativism, saying wrong is right and right is wrong. They really keep pointing that people cannot possibly have a good moral structure without Christianity, and without it we just turn to heathens. We don't know right from left, we don't know up from down. And he keeps talking about how dangerous his moral relativism is, as if that isn't his same moral system. Considering they will just call something objectively wrong, like killing a child, but if God does it, it's okay and it's just and it's needed. That is moral relativism. It's not this like solid thing that this thing is always wrong. They don't believe that. And he just said that earlier when the woman was saying, "Isn't the Bible sexist?" And he's like, well, for that time period, it was actually like good and moral and progressive. And it's like, so you're admitting you think morality changes with time. You're admitting that, like, our morality progresses. It's not this, like, solid thing. If it was this objective thing, time wouldn't matter. Time, like, you shouldn't even be talking about time at all, or, like, what the culture was back then, because that doesn't matter to you if you have objective morality. But they don't. They don't, and they like won't ever admit this, but they even talk like they don't, and they don't realize what they're saying. A lot of times, like if I ask, hey, why did God give them a handbook on having slaves? Like, is he commanding them to do something immoral? Because they'll claim that, you know, slavery is, well, some of them will claim that slavery is objectively immoral. But then when I ask them, why did God condone something that's objectively immoral? They say, well, that was the norm for the time period. What does that matter if it's objectively wrong? What is time? What is culture matter at all? It shouldn't matter if your morals are objective. They're not changing over time. They're also doing this with the founding fathers, where they'll be like, well, that was back then, that was the normal, or they didn't all have slaves, or they were just kids. Like, this isn't objective morality, and you can't convince me otherwise. No, they don't actually talk that way or believe that way, only when it's convenient to them and they have to defend some past actions of people they align themselves with or God himself. Then there are exceptions made, which means it's not objective. Anyways, that was my little tangent. The congressman then says that they will vote in favor of the like educational guidelines, and then Dave gives him a nice little threat as a treat.
Scripture promises the gates of hell will not prevail against it.
This is not hell, Mr. Hill. This is Washington.
Close enough.
I love how he's just like, careful, God will burn ya. He'll burn ya up. Like, holy shit, that's such a weird thing to say to someone. Like, he's literally bringing violence into the picture for no reason. He's like, hey, you're actually gonna burn forever. Gotcha. And then he says, like, that. I just have to pause there because that's so insane to act like that's a normal thing to say to somebody. Like, that is violent. That's crazy. And he says, like how DC is basically hell. It doesn't shock me because they always shit on cities that they view as liberal. Like, they're so terrible. They're like crime ridden and just heathens live there. It's such a terrible place. It's basically like every single liberal city is like Sodom and Gomorrah. Then he says, men have tried getting rid of Christianity for 2,000 years. Huh? Or what? The entire reason this religion is so popular and has lasted so long is because people are upholding these systems. People are evangelizing. This is a widely accepted thing. Like, sure, you have people here and there who don't like it or whatever, but like, that's not the case for the majority of the world. Like, he was just explaining how he thinks the United States of America was built on Christianity. Does that sound like people are out to get Christianity and they're trying to destroy it? Which is it? Like, were we built on Christianity, or are people desperately trying to get rid of it? It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's literally the most popular religion on planet Earth, and he's acting as if like everybody hates them for being Christians. But I guess anything for some persecution plot. Okay, so now we are back at Aisha's father and what he's going through at the hospital.
You want to talk? Let's talk.
Again, why are they pretending this is the first time this man has ever prayed? Why are they doing this? Like, it's so weird. I feel like they just want to believe that they have this like monopoly on like prayer and then also being able to talk directly to God, but that's just like not true. I can't tell you how many times I've heard Christians say like, our religion is the only one where you talk directly to God. No, it isn't. That's just factually untrue. Anyways, he is essentially begging for his daughter's life to Jesus. Okay, now we are back in DC, and Dr. Burke, the Congressman Smith, is with Dave and the crew, and he essentially says, it doesn't matter what happens today, we will continue to fight for America. And then Martin says that schools should teach from a religious standpoint.
Religion is the only solid basis of good morals. Therefore, education should teach the precepts of religion.
I guess Christianity isn't being taught in schools. Devastating news for Christian nationalists.
Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin. This is serious.
Then random people come out of the woodworks and say, not everyone who does homeschooling is Christian conservative. And they're like, what? We didn't know that. And so they start listing off reasons. One of the reasons is a woman says she homeschools due to institutionalized racism. Which is it? Are the schools too woke or are they too racist? Like, it's so crazy because this whole time in this movie you're talking about how public schools are so woke and they're trying to wokeify your kids, but now they're racist. Now they're too racist. It doesn't make any sense. Then we have another woman who says she homeschools her child because they're special needs and the schools aren't equipped to deal with that. Yet most evangelicals have voted for a man who wants to cut funding for special education services in public schools. Make it make any sense. And then there is obviously an anti-vaxxer there that's like, hey, I don't want to give my kids vaccines. That's also why I homeschool. And then they all basically come together and say, we're stronger together. Let's fight this. This is government overreach. Okay, so now we get to see Dave speak to the congresspeople one last time. For some reason, he just gets to speak for 5 more minutes. And then Dave basically says, don't forget our roots, fellas. Do not forget our roots. And then he basically says, hey, I have friends of different races from different countries. Even they understand this. Okay. And they know their freedoms are on the line and that the government is just trying to divide us by talking about how Noah got all the animals on the ark. Huh?
If 2 + 2 is 4, right? And 5 + 5 is 10. Okay. What the fuck is this?
So that is the divisive thing, is asking the logistics of the ark story. What? And they're using this as a distraction so we don't realize we are losing our rights. And then he says they are all power hungry. That's crazy work to say things like, oh, questioning the Noah story is actually what's dividing us. As if the insane bigotry isn't doing that. It's actually not people being racist, it's not people being sexist, it's not people being homophobic, it's not people being transphobic, it's actually like you guys questioning the ARC story. And of course he has to slip something in about changing biology. I knew they could not go this whole entire movie without mentioning trans people, and that was their way of doing it. As like thinking they weren't going to mention them at some point is like, yeah, it's not possible. They have to mention them always, even if it's like in a more subtle way. And then he talks about how they're rewriting history. Everyone's clapping, everyone's like, damn Dave, you killing it, you're destroying it, good arguments. Then they show the local judge back home, and she tears up the court papers, I guess, because she's like, I don't want to fight against homeschooling anymore. And then Aisha wakes up, and her father are reunited. Then they show homeschooling. We're basically at the end of the movie. They're showing homeschooling continuing. They won and stopped the new mandate from happening. Hooray. So, ending thoughts. Unfortunately, I think this one was a lot worse than the last one. And people told me that the last one was like as good as it gets, even though it wasn't even good. You know what I'm saying? It was the least bad, I guess, as far as like insane stuff they're talking about or presenting. I'm almost afraid to see the fifth one. I feel like it's just going to be more MAGA than this one, because this one was like very, very MAGA. Very MAGA. Basically, after this movie, I was like, if somebody asked me what white Christian nationalism was, I would legitimately just show them this movie. That's it. I would just show them this movie. I wouldn't have to explain anything else. It's the easiest way to explain it. And if someone asked me like who is the majority of Trump's fan base, I would also show them this movie, and it would explain everything. It just perfectly encapsulates all of it. But it's also just extremely vague at times, which is obviously intentional to reach a wider audience, believe it or not. This very much shows how politics/conservatism is a new religion. I know people really hate hearing that, but I genuinely cannot view it any other way. I see it getting worse and worse every day, and although this is bigger than Trump, it's bigger than his admin, he's having a huge impact on evangelical culture. There is really no denying that, and it has honestly been so heartbreaking watching it develop, and I mean that. It's been like genuinely so heartbreaking. And I know I'm not alone in this. I have felt, and I've heard many people say the same, I have felt immense grief watching this all unfold. I actually heard someone give it a name, which I thought was very interesting, because I've been looking for a name for what this feels like for a while now. It's called moral injury, which is essentially when you are watching something or someone do things that very much violate your own moral and ethical beliefs. It can give you a sense of deep betrayal. And I'm glad I found a word for this, because it's always been hard for me to describe or even honestly understand myself. And I know a lot of people I've heard explain the same thing. Because a lot of times people think when you grieve people, it's because they're dead, but that's not true. You can grieve people for so many different reasons and grieve so many different things in general. One of the hardest parts, at least for me, and I know other people feel this way, again, I just want to keep adding that because I know this is like a collective feeling for so many. You keep thinking there's going to be a line drawn somewhere. Eventually, at some point, they're going to be like, this is too far. This has gone too far. This is too cruel. This lacks too much empathy. This is too like inhumane. And it doesn't come. It keeps not coming. I'm not saying that nobody has ever changed their mind, because I do think there are people that are seeing what's going on and are like turning away from it. But it's discouraging when you see that they're like, for some people, it feels like there's no line. And every time I feel like it digs a deeper and deeper wound, which is really hard to accept. Especially with this Epstein thing is a great example, because this is a line a lot of people thought they wouldn't see people crossing. But now we see people like Megyn Kelly saying, hey, Epstein wasn't actually a pedo. He just liked 15-year-old girls. He just liked people who were barely legal. And I think hearing that is a special kind of devastation for our country. And I think it's really hard watching big groups of people justify something that horrible and like just keep avoiding it or justifying it. And a lot of these people are the same ones who will create very intense conspiracy theories surrounding Pizzagate and stuff like that, and QAnon conspiracy theories. I think one of the reasons they're so likely to believe in these conspiracy theories is because it's the perfect made-up scenario where all of the Democrats and all of the liberals are the bad guys. They're the bad guys, they're the ones assaulting children, and it's just black and white. But instead, in real life, it's actually not black and white. There can be people from both sides who are doing something horrible. And it's really hard for them to accept that this leader that they idolize and they like basically bow down for could be one of them, is one of them. They didn't like, it's such a weird thing to watch unfold. And again, they're okay with it when it's in a conspiracy theory that perfectly encapsulate all their enemies as the bad guys. And it's just like, yeah, all the guys we don't like are those are the bad people. But then when it is their own leader, then they're like, guys, it's actually not that bad. So anyways, there's my little side tangent. I was thinking a lot about these things during the movie. Please let me know you guys' thoughts and feelings on these subjects, on this movie. Like, what you think about these topics in general. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. And tell me your thoughts about how you feel the government should be involved in homeschooling or not. I'm interested to know. I have my opinions on it. Maybe I'll do a video on that. But yeah, I want to hear from you guys. I hope you guys are doing good. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I will see you in the last God's Not Dead movie review. God's Not Dead 5. It's going to be a good one. I can feel it.